On Tech News Today, the Chinese government bans Instagram during pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, but users find an app that can't be shut down. Or can it? Smugglers have already exhausted demand for iPhone 6 phones in China even before the phones are officially on sale there. And Europe says Apple cheated on taxes and owes them billions. All that and more coming up right now on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, September 29th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. And by Citrix ShareFile. Enhance your workflow, send files of almost any size easily and securely with Citrix ShareFile. Try ShareFile today for a 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with a journalist who reported. Welcome to the show, and with me is Anthony Nielsen. How's it going, man?
It's good. How are you?
Good, very good. So glad you're here. Jason Howell is off today. And it's Monday. That means Lindsey Turrentine is with us today. Welcome to you, Lindsey Turrentine.
Hi, everybody.
So I want to talk about Ello, and you probably don't want to talk about it because I saw your post. You posted something. You signed up. You got an invitation, and you said, hey, so now what do we do, or what's next, or something like that. And, it's a bit of a desolate, ghost town, to use a Google Plus phrase. But what do you think of it generally? Do you think it has potential? Do you think this is something that could go somewhere, or is this just another cul-de-sac in the social networking wars?
I think it's going to be really, really tough for Ello to make any ground. I think that the challenge with a new social network is that people already have a social network, and there are some people who are really frustrated with Facebook and other big social networks, but the reality is it takes work to establish a new social network. And Ello is not very good at findability right now. Part of the reason I haven't really logged in much more than a couple more times to send other people invites is because I can't figure out how to find people on
Exactly.
Ello.
The search doesn't work, for example.
The search doesn't work. And then in addition to that, I find myself drawn to where my friends are. So unless there's a giant event that only Ello can really capture, some sort of cultural movement that only people on Ello are really talking about, I think it's gonna be really tough, ads or no.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And it's really kind of an odd thing. I think that Malik said it best when he said that the apparent excitement around Ello is really frustration with existing social networks. And there was a really fascinating conversation yesterday on Twit. I think it was Leo who said that that in fact the excitement around this is really it's just what happens with new social networks. Social networks are awesome for like a year or 2 or 3 years, and then they go south. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about that since I listened to that show, and it's really true. If you look at Twitter, Facebook, Google+, there's super excitement in the beginning, and then 2 things happen. They try to monetize it. That really kind of spoiled Facebook and Twitter. And the other thing is that everybody comes rushing in, including the spammers, the haters, the trolls, the newbies, everybody else. And all these social networks people get soured on them. And so when there's a new one that people start talking about it, people optimistically jump on it, hoping that it'll be awesome. And it could be awesome for a while. But that gives me hope about Ello because they're so, communist or whatever in their outlook. They really are not out to make a ton of money. They're not going to collect personal information. They're not going to show advertising. They're not going to demand real names. Not going to do any of the things that Facebook and Twitter do. And, Google Plus doesn't have ads, but they do harvest your personal data, like to a maximum extent on that social network. Maybe they'll retain that sort of small, closed kind of like private club kind of feel that new social networks have. Maybe they can sustain it over a period of many years.
Well, maybe they can. And sometimes I think the feeling of exclusivity is what makes something seem worth pursuing, right? So I think what we saw happen over the last few days was people saying like, "Ooh, I got an invite. I'm one of only a few people who have an invite," and then making other people feel special by having an invite. One of the most entertaining things I saw was a lot of people jumping on Facebook saying, "I have Ello invites." let me
Yeah.
know if you want some, which is, I think, a little bit of it's kind of, it makes you feel important,
Yes.
right? So you're
Yeah.
using another
Right.
established social media network to show how important you are on this less established social media. I think it's really interesting. I don't think it's going to stick. Honestly, I think there will be a few people who try to get around the communist nature of Ello and who will try to make money on it, and then it'll spoil it. And unless they can iterate really quickly, which is hard to do without a lot of money, it's also just not very easy to use.
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, a growing wave of pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong endured a night of tear gas last night. The conflict continues into the work week there after a 3-day sit-in. The protesters are demanding democratic elections, which were promised by the Chinese Communist Party-led government in Beijing in a 1984 treaty that led to the transfer of Hong Kong from Britain to China. As part of the crackdown, though, the Chinese government banned Instagram, reportedly to prevent people in mainland China from getting any crazy ideas about democracy. In response to rumors that the government might shut down internet connectivity, and also because the number of protesters overwhelmed nearby cell towers, protesters began downloading a mesh networking messaging app called FireChat, which we first told you about back in March. At one point last night, FireChat had 33,000 simultaneous users in Hong Kong, which is incredible to me. Kevin Fitchard writes for GigaOM and has covered FireChat extensively there and joins us now. Welcome to you, Kevin Fitchard.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into this news, what is FireChat exactly and how does it work?
Well, it's a messaging app, and the big difference between it and the thousands of other messaging apps that are available in the app stores is that it actually has an offline capability. You can actually chat with people who are nearby by establishing direct connections via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi direct. So basically, it's an internet chat service that doesn't require the internet to work. And in a situation like where protests in China, where you have a very censorous government, I mean, you can imagine it could be quite useful if cellular network is shut down or internet access or access to particular, IP addresses are shut down. This allows you to just communicate with people in a large group that happen to be nearby.
So how does this work on different platforms? Does it work the same way on iOS and Android? Is it slightly different? Can those phones communicate effectively with one another?
They can. They can now. I mean, that was kind of one of the technical issues that Open Garden, the company that created FireChat, had to overcome. But essentially, they're forming these kind of ad hoc mesh networks, and they can. Not only can like my iOS phone connect to the Android phone that might be 100 feet away, but it could pass that message along to a user that might be 100 feet away from that person I'm connected to. They can just hop or daisy chain together, and so the more people that you get together, the larger of a community you can create over this kind of group chat application. And so in a protest situation or concert situations, like for instance, it was used extensively at Burning Man. I mean, it works quite well. And, especially if you're not able to access that cellular network to get to make that regular chat app, that WhatsApp or that Facebook Messenger work.
Now, from a network connectivity point of view, this is completely different. But of course, it uses the regular radios in the phones, the ones that we use for Bluetooth and other uses. Is this something that can be shut down with a cell phone jammer? Will a jammer actually effectively prevent people from using this?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I suppose if you flood the airwaves with enough interference and signals, you could shut anything down basically. If you just introduce white noise in the spectrum, you could pretty much cripple any kind of communications. That's why governments have limitations on like what you can use. But I've known people that have created what is essentially called a Wi-Fi gun based on hardware they bought at Radio Shack and a Home Depot, which can basically knock out people's Wi-Fi networks in like a block radius or something like that.
Remind me to avoid people you know.
Yeah, but obviously, there are regulations against this kind of thing. But we're talking about an authoritarian Chinese government that I'm sure is willing to take particular issues to shut down any type of communications if it happens in coming from a distant group. So it is a possibility.
Do you think that this is FireChat's moment in the sun, that enough people are going to hear about this and understand what it is, that it's really going to catch on like Twitter did after its big South by Southwest debut? Is this a big deal?
Or even more like, Twitter's used in Egypt or something like that. I don't know. The numbers we're still talking about are kind of small. They had 100,000 downloads in 24 hours and that kind of thing, which, in terms of Hong Kong, might be kind of big. In terms of global popularity, is not. But I do think people are kind of discovering it as a tool for these kind of situations, a situation where they kind of need this kind of connectivity in order to communicate with one another. I honestly don't think like the average person on the street is going to download FireChat for that one time they go to Burning Man and they know the cellular network is going to come down or something like that. But I mean, in situations where you have protests popping up around the world, whether it's going to be in, Cairo or, Alexandria or like in Hong Kong, I mean, I think it's a very, very easy thing to do to kind of prep yourself for the worst.
So it's kind of interesting that Facebook, which owns Instagram, of course, was blocked there, has been blocked in China since the Xinjiang riots some years ago. And in fact, Beijing did cut off internet connectivity entirely. That's the rumor that led to some of these downloads, apparently, during those riots in 2009. So the Chinese government has just completely shut off internet connectivity before and then banned Facebook over in those case, riots. These aren't riots. These are very peaceful, genteel kind of protests, although there's a lot of pepper spray and tear gas and that sort of thing. So it's pretty messy and a little dangerous for those who are there. Now, isn't FireChat like a great way to spread false information? I mean, I would imagine the Chinese government could essentially control the crowd by pretending to be people and saying, hey, everybody, we're all going over there. And like, you go down the street and there's a fleet of paddy wagons or something. I mean, they could do just about anything to spread false information, couldn't they?
I mean, they could. I mean, almost like a Pinkerton agent, like stuck to the middle of the crowd. I mean, it'd be very easy to do because, I mean, it's a very open network, and what's beautiful about it being so open can also be kind of a down point to it. I mean, if you wanted to be part of the network, all you have to do is download FireChat to a phone and then walk into the crowd, and you're instantly connected to everybody that's communicating via that network. You can enter any chat room, and because you can use any name that you want, I mean, even though technically you do have to register with the service with a name and an email address, you can use a false name, and actually Open Garden is recommending that protesters do that just, to protect themselves. But yeah, that you could spread false information. You could, and if you actually look at some of the FireChat, conversations that are going on right now, I mean, I can't tell you whether there's false information spreading out, but there's just a lot of noise. There's a lot of every other message is the word hi, everybody's just repeating themselves. It's just absolute chaos. I mean, there is useful information. I mean, there are people posting stuff about like, this and this is going to be going on in Wan Chai and Kowloon at this particular time, that, you should go to this chat room to communicate or try and organize about it. But most of it just seems to be, I mean, at least the stuff that's in English, a lot of it just tends to be general nonsense. And that's kind of like what has been kind of pervasive about FireChat's overall network. And in many cases, they have chat rooms and topics, but it's largely chaos. But I mean, that's it's kind of a beautiful chaos in many ways. So.
Do you see a future for FireChat that's I mean, this is very important use. It's more sort of benign. Or you mentioned concerts. Are there any other situations in which this would be really useful outside of a political situation, or one where you're trying to get around networks because you're trying to avoid censorship?
I mean, yeah, there are. I mean, they all seem to be like an example, and I've actually seen this used is like in subways where, you might not have cellular network connectivity. You could, if you're trapped in a subway car, you can communicate and complain about being trapped in a subway car with people next door to you and stuff like that. That obviously isn't a use case that, that just grabs hold of the imagination and that kind of thing. But it is overall a communications app. I mean, you can use it to contact specific people, to enter specific chat rooms. You can access the internet. It is not entirely off-grid. I mean, it does have on-grid functions itself, so you can communicate with anyone in the world. But it's kind of the addition of that off-grid capability that makes it useful for those kind of situations. What's interesting, you kind of mentioned beforehand, whether or not, or you asked beforehand how indication of how many people are using this or what people use it for. We really don't know. Not even Open Garden, who owns FireChat, really knows, because these conversations are taking off-grid, meaning that it doesn't traverse any of their servers. They have no idea what the amount of off-grid conversations that are actually happening. They only know the amount of on-grid conversations that are happening. They can only surmise based upon what they're seeing when people actually do connect the internet about what's happening when they're not connected to the internet.
I personally think that the best consumer use case would be to build it into automobile operating systems or map apps like Waze. Waze has a communications feature that goes through the internet. It'd be great to link car to car so that you could have internet connectivity into primitive areas that don't have it, such as Sonoma County. here where Petaluma is. Most of Sonoma County has no much of it has no cell reception, which is Go ahead.
Oh, you should check out there's a project called GoTenna out right now that this startup in New York. Have you talked to them yet? They're doing a very, very wide area connectivity via like low frequency airwaves. So. And
we applaud them. Kevin Fitchard is at gigaohm.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at KFitchard. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, in just a sec, we're going to hear about another iPhone update, the gift that keeps on giving, that iPhone 6. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle wants to buy your used iPhone, your used iPad, your used Apple gadget, and they're going to give you super good money for it. Just go to gazelle.com. That's Gazelle.com. You find the item that you have that's just been sitting around collecting dust, sort of wipe the dust off. Look and remember what it is. Go there, plug it in, tell them what condition it's in. It's lousy condition, pretty good condition, excellent condition. The price will vary depending on what you say. Let's say it's flawless, and right now we're looking at a 5S, 64-gigabyte 5S locked to AT&T, $295 for the unlocked price, $245 for the base price. That's real money. That'll go a long way toward buying your Apple Watch next year. In fact, that might pay for the whole thing. And so you really have to go to Gazelle.com. They will pay you fast with a PayPal option. They have they'll pay you by check. They can pay you by Amazon gift card. That's a great option because they give you 5% more money for your device. They'll even send you a free box. Just throw the phone in that box, put the sticker on the outside of the box, and hand it to your mailman, and off it goes, and you will get paid. It's really an awesome deal because it is so easy to do. So find out what your phone's worth. Take a minute. Go to Gazelle.com and find out. Well, Lindsey, it looks like those smugglers are doing a pretty great job at getting phones into China.
Yeah, maybe too great a job. It's in the last few days, over the last week, the gray market for iPhones in China has softened so quickly that prices have fallen almost by half. So right when the iPhones came out, the starting price for an iPhone 6 low-end one in China was around $2,000. Now it's softened to about $1,000, which is a pretty big drop. And so here to talk about that is Sam Colt, who's a tech reporter for Business Insider. Sam, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Can you tell us a little bit more about why this happened? Why did the market tank so quickly for these gray market phones?
I think some people really anticipated the demand in mainland China for these iPhones. And so immediately smugglers, particularly from Hong Kong and Japan, started flying iPhones over to mainland China. But, as in the report you just pulled up, it noted that resellers were saying that the price was falling so precipitously that during their flight to mainland China, it already lost its value. So I think you just have a lot of smugglers flooding the market based on, I guess, perceptions of pent-up demand.
Now, I'm a little skeptical about this report. It was reported in the South China Morning Post. It's a totally legitimate newspaper. It's not controlled by the Chinese government or anything like that. But just because the smuggled phone demand is saturated doesn't mean the legitimate, a lot of people don't want to buy from a scalper or whatever. They want to buy it in the store. They want the whole experience of waiting on the sidewalk for 3 days, or, they want the whole Apple experience. And so I'm not convinced that this means that Apple's not going to be able to sell iPhone 6s when it goes on sale, whenever that may be. But what do you think about that? Do you think they've actually smuggled in the millions and millions of phones that would saturate the Chinese market?
Well, no, I don't. I'm pretty sure that the Hong Kong stores and the Japan stores are limiting iPhone purchases to 2, like in the United States, which means that, as a smuggler, you're pretty limited in terms of the number of handsets you can actually bring into China. I also think that the iPhone sales, when it actually goes on sale in China, will appeal to price-sensitive consumers, as it has in the United States.
Do you think that the legitimacy of some mainland China companies and their sort of growing success in China, and I'm thinking specifically about Xiaomi and Lenovo, is eating into Apple's market share, into the demand? Do you think that Chinese consumers are a little bit more happy with what they can get their hands on already?
I think that definitely could be it. I think Xiaomi in particular makes very iPhone-like smartphones. And if you're looking for basically an iPhone-like experience, but you don't want to deal with the hassle of smugglers, then Xiaomi's, I think it's the M4, is a pretty good choice as well.
Yeah, and Apple totally stole that one more thing gimmick from Xiaomi. That was a shameless theft there. So this is a really interesting question. That Apple actually had record-breaking sales for the iPhone 6, much more than the iPhone 5S and 5C, and that was without China. The 5 series was the first iPhone that actually launched on the same day as it did in the United States and China. So that was a big deal for Apple. But despite that, even without China, Apple still had record-breaking sales. And I'm wondering, with this story about how easily saturated the market may be, about how soft demand may be, how much competition there is now from, as you say, iPhone-like companies like Xiaomi, do you think that China is not as important as everybody thought it would be? I mean, everybody thought, especially Wall Street, thought that China was going to, quadruple Apple's, I'm exaggerating, but massively grow Apple's most profitable business, which of course is iPhones. Is that looking like that wasn't exactly accurate?
Yeah, I think Wall Street may have, set the bar too high in terms of iPhone sales in China, but I think the China will be particularly important for the iPhone 6 Plus. I recently read about in Japan, the 6 is outselling the 6 Plus, I believe about 5-1. And I think that the numbers for the 6 Plus will be better in China, where the demand for phablet smartphones is higher.
I'm curious about the Hong Kong supply. So all the stories that I'm reading say there were a ton of iPhone 6s coming from Hong Kong onto mainland China. So Apple made a decision to sell plenty of iPhones in Hong Kong during the first week. Do you think this was part of Apple's strategy, or maybe even a little bit of a misfire, and that if they had held back on phones in Hong Kong a little bit, it could have kept the excitement a little bit higher?
Yeah, I think, maybe if they had held back, it could have kept the excitement a little bit higher. But again, people are paying upwards of $3,000 for the handset. So I think that there's definitely a demand in China.
Sam Colt writes at businessinsider.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at SCRANE Colt. Thank you so much for joining us, Sam Colt.
Thanks.
All right. Well, Apple's being accused of profiting from illegal tax deals with the Irish government for more than 20 years. Apple promised to bring jobs to Ireland in exchange for major tax breaks. At least that's the conclusion of a European Commission's investigation in the matter. Apple faces billions with a B in dollars of fines and euros, both dollars and euros. They're going to pay if the European Commission gets its way. Lindsey Turrentine, this is quite astonishing because here the sort of Irish government this is Europe, and Europe is essentially accusing itself of colluding with a company, and there are other companies. Starbucks is another company that's sort of been lumped in together with this whole process, but essentially they're using Ireland as a way to dodge all kinds of taxes. That's what they're saying. Apple's saying, hey, we cooperated with every government. We've paid every tax. We've broken no laws. Do you have a guess about where this is going to end? Are they going to actually pay billions of dollars in fines?
I really doubt they'll end up paying billions of dollars. If I were to just guess, I would guess that Apple will end up paying something as a gesture, but it would be way too damaging to Ireland to settle something like this in the billions of dollars. When you think about Ireland's role and the success that Ireland has had over the last 5 to 10 years in terms of developing a tech marketplace, because so many companies, it's not just Apple, Google has a big office in Ireland. It's a hugely successful business for Ireland, and I would imagine that Ireland would fight back pretty hard sort of behind the scenes.
Absolutely, and it's Apple, of course, is one of Cork's biggest employers. They've invested about $100 million recently in Irish operations. So clearly Apple's taken a strong interest in Ireland, and whether that was in exchange for big tax breaks, who knows? But it also raises, I think, within Ireland, the question of the value of European Union membership, really, because here the European Union is slamming them for doing what they had to do to get lots of people employed in Ireland. So, it's going to be an interesting issue. We'll see how it goes. A lot of times these European Commission investigations, they come out with conclusions, and it's a long process to get to some really watered down conclusion at the end of the day. So I think you're absolutely right about that. They probably won't pay multi-billion-dollar fines. They may pay some fine. It might be a slap on the wrist, but still, it's interesting to see the European Union going after these sort of weird shell games that companies play internationally to avoid big taxes.
Well, it seems like this is sort of the EU's way, too. The EU will have sort of an opening salvo, and this happened with Google and privacy, too, right? They'll sort of make a very scary accusation, and then things kind of level out over time after that. But the EU definitely, I feel like it's the EU's way of saying, hey, we're paying attention to what you're doing. Watch out.
Yeah, and we also need some money. So it looks like Microsoft is opening a big store in New York City near the Apple Store.
That's right. Microsoft apparently has been looking for years for real estate for a flagship store in New York City. Now they've finally found something. It's at 677 Fifth Avenue, which is currently the Fendi storefront. Microsoft says it's going to open its new store sometime in 2015. And this is, I mean, just in case you've never been there, this is a really Tony shopping district. I think in the 90s, this area was the most expensive retail real estate in the world, and it's probably still up there. This is where people go to shop. It's kind of a big deal to have your store there.
One of the reports I read said that the price of this store is $2,749 per square foot.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's very, very visible. Yeah. It's very near Rockefeller Center. I think it's probably just a block and a half, 2 blocks away. Like you said, the Apple store is just a few blocks down the street. The big Sony store is around the corner, about a block and a half away. It's really very visible.
It is very visible, and importantly, it's visible to the entire world. Tourists, especially well-heeled tourists, go to that neighborhood. So real estate people consider the entire district to be an international retail location. It's like having stores in the capitals of, Beijing, Tokyo, Seoul, Korea, Dubai, and so on, because all of the people from those countries come to New York City, and they're going to see the store. They're probably going to wander in out of curiosity or whatever. And it's another interesting little trivia point about the Apple store that's nearby. The Apple store is actually the single most photographed location in all of New York.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. People go take pictures.
Including the Statue of Liberty?
Yes. It's more photographed than the Statue of Liberty. So it's, this is what kind of attention Microsoft is hoping to get. The problem is that their products are not as mind-blowing as Apple stores. Their stores are like, okay, they seem like a kind of a copy of the Apple stores, but kind of a bad copy. And they don't have the kind of, a Surface Pro is not, going to blow people's minds the way some of these giant screen iMacs do and some of the other products that are in there. So I wish them luck, but I don't think holding themselves up for direct comparison with an Apple store is a great idea, actually.
Well, and this is coming at a very strange time when you think about it, right? Satya Nadella is coming in and talking about much more cooperation with other companies and a much more service-oriented company. So it seems like sort of an odd time to open up this retail store and really talk about the hardware that Microsoft's putting its stamp on. But then it also makes me think that maybe they're going to try something new, and maybe this is really going to be more about showing how Microsoft integrates with all kinds of products and not just sort of the Surface tablets and the Xboxes and the sort of smattering of successful hardware products that Microsoft has tried. I mean, the other limitation here is that if you look at this storefront, it's really wedged in among other storefronts. Microsoft is just physically not going to be able to, I don't think, create something like that giant glass cube that Apple has. It's just not the right real estate for that. So I'm going to assume that they're going to try something a little bit more integrated and different.
They're going to put tiles all over it or something. Well, one of the Microsoft spokespeople said that it's going to be much more than a Microsoft store. In other words, like you suggested, they're probably going to do something interesting. It's not going to be a giant glass cube, but they're hoping to do something. I was surprised also from researching this story that, in fact, Microsoft is not as far behind in terms of the number of stores as you might expect from Apple. For example, Apple has 254 stores in the U.S., at least. They have at least that many. That's how many they had a couple of months ago. Microsoft has 104. So that's more than a third of the stores. I would have thought it would, that Apple would be miles ahead. They're way ahead, obviously, but this is, 104 stores. I didn't know that Microsoft had 104 retail stores. And that's in addition to the mini stores that they're currently putting inside of 600 Best Buy locations.
Yeah, they've been working on it slowly when they do. And a lot of their stores have this sort of help desk kind of area as well, sort of like with the Genius Bar. And actually, it might be very useful for Microsoft to have that infrastructure set up so that they can have more sophisticated conversations with everyday users instead of just relying on phone-based support for their technologies too. I think it's probably very useful for them in addition to being advertising, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it is nice also to see Microsoft being wise enough to essentially it's going to be a money-losing store. They're not going to make profits. It's likely that they're not going to make profits like the Apple stores do. But it's a nice, soft way to sell their products. People, thousands or maybe over a period of years, millions and millions of people will see that store, get a warm and fuzzy feeling about Microsoft, learn a few things about the company, be impressed by things that may not have seen before, and that may have an effect overall in the long term, especially when multiplied by the other stores that they have. So, hope that it works, and it's nice to see retail stores, especially like you say, with some sort of help desk of some kind, because we all need help with our Windows machines, that is for sure. Well, in just a sec, we're going to do some follow-ups, but first I want to tell you all about Citrix ShareFile, which is the secure way and the easy way and the fun way, actually, to send attachments over the internet, because you're not really sending attachments. That's a terrible idea. Never do that. Never send attachments via email, because anybody can get at that. It's pretty easy. And if it's an attachment of any size, if it's any sort of video or picture or whatever that's too big for whoever it is you're sending it to or the company that they work for, it's not going to get through. And you may not know that it didn't get through. You'll think they have a file that they, in fact, don't have. And that's what's great about Citrix ShareFile. You actually upload the file to a secure location in the cloud, and what they do is they send a secure link. They'll send it directly to the person that you want to send it to, and nobody else. And you can, in fact, designate that person or any number of people. You can designate how many times it's downloaded, for how long it could be downloaded, and they can be, and you can be notified when that file is downloaded. It's a wonderful way to maintain control of your files, not only as you send it, but after you send it. And so that's really the only way to send any sort of file over the internet conveniently and securely, and with the knowledge that it's going to get through. And of course, they'll notify you when it does get through. It's really, really great. And you got to check it out. Just try ShareFile with our special offer. Sign up today, and you'll get a 30-day free trial. There's no obligation at all. Just go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. TNT, of course, is for Tech News Today. And remember, visit sharefile.com and type in TNT. We showed you a video on Friday showing a thief in Amsterdam grabbing an iPhone while on a fast-moving scooter. The victim was apparently giving an interview during the crime, and we're watching the video here if you're looking at the video version. We knew the phone was fake, but we've since learned that the crime was also fake. The whole thing was a stunt pulled by comedian Jesse Godel. Foiled again, Lindsey Turrentine, another suckered in by another hoax. So
it just was too perfect. It was too perfect. You'd have to be such a great driver.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this on the show, what an awesome handoff it was. I mean, the scooter was going 25 miles an hour or something. It was really moving, and it grabbed it without dropping it. I mean, I've dropped iPhones without a case, just standing there. So, and it was raining too. So yeah, there's clearly something amiss there. So we'll see what he does with the tape of that hoax. Well, the Xbox One is now for sale in China. That's the good news. The bad news is that the Chinese government had previously banned foreign game consoles and still bans a lot of software and games. Popular games like Halo and Call of Duty, which to me are the main reason to get an Xbox One, are not allowed by the Chinese government. So Chinese Xbox users will have to make do with titles like Dance Central Spotlight, Naughty Kitties, and Zoo Tycoon. Oh, man. My pulse is racing just thinking about it. But there's more bad news. The Xbox One with Kinect costs $700 in China, which is about $200 more than the price in the United States. Man.
I think this is all about saying that you own it. There's no PS4 yet in China. Right. I think this is just like, look, I got one.
That's right. You want to play?
I've got the money to pay for it. It's okay that it costs $200 more.
Right. You want to play Dance Dance Revolution? It's awesome. Lenovo's $2.1 billion deal to buy IBM's server business has now passed regulatory scrutiny and is expected to close October 1st. This is an interesting chapter because, of course, Lenovo is gobbling up lots and lots of successful businesses, including the forthcoming finalized sale of the sort of part of Motorola. And that's going to be interesting when they do that as well. I hope they are successful and as visionary as they have been with the old laptop business from IBM. They did a great job of continuing that business and growing it and continuing the reputation for quality of products. And if they do that with the other products that they're buying and the other divisions and companies that they're buying, then that's good news for users, I think.
It seems promising.
Yep, absolutely. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Matthew Oten in Big Pine, California. He's the co-owner of the Copper Top Barbecue there in Big Pine. He says he listens to the show every day on his Bluetooth speaker while cooking and doing prep for the day. He also enjoys Twig and All About Android. He also said the Twit network has literally shaped his business, and his company uses the products or services of almost every Twit sponsor. And he said that without the Twit network, his business would not be what it is today. Well, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that, and that's some good-looking grub there. And now, great, now I'm hungry and I want barbecue.
Yeah, that looks good.
Thanks a lot, man. Well, how do you watch or listen to TNT? Just upload the picture or video or whatever it is and use the hashtag #HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. And you, of course, can search the hashtag and find those yourself. There's a lot of them out there. Well, that is the Tech News Today. Lindsey Turrentine, thank you so much for joining us on Tech News Today as our co-anchor.
It was fun, as always.
All right. Well, thanks again. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feely, Yahoo, RSS. So many options to subscribe, and it's free, and it's easy, and it's very convenient. You just have it come right to you. So subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. You can also follow us on Ello. On Ello, we're Tech News Today. And please send us your thoughts and opinions. Send email to tnt@twit.tv. Leave voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. And also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.